Right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Candace Boutel. I am the executive director of Inspire Wisconsin. So we are very excited not only to have you all here today live on our call, but I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Noah Lenke. He is the owner and chief flight instructor at Celestial Kinetics Flight Academy. We chatted a little bit, but I'm super excited for you to share with students not only about your own career journey, but that of becoming a pilot. So why don't you go ahead? You can introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your role and your career journey.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction, Candice. As you mentioned, I currently run and operate the flight school. We're based here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I've been doing that for about 2.5 years as an instructor, and I've been flying since 2019. I'm only 23 years old, so I'll kind of talk a little bit about kind of the journey I took and then kind of some other journeys. The beauty about aviation is that there's a lot of different ways to kind of reach the same end goal. So it can really be a diverse selection of how you want to get from point A to point B, which is super exciting. And it's really different than many other career tracks. So we'll be talking a little bit about that in the future. So I started flight training in 2019. I got my private pilot certificate in 2020, which is kind of that first foundational license of becoming a pilot. It allows you to fly recreationally, fly with friends, fly with family, things like that. And then add on those other ratings. So additional ratings I've added on is IFR, which is instrument. It allows you to fly in the clouds. Commercial pilot certificate in both single engine airplanes as well as multi-engine airplanes. And then CFI, which is certificated flight instructor. Certificate flight instructor instrument, and then multi-engine flight instructor are additional ratings I've added on. I'm chief flight instructor here, so I kind of help oversee the business as well as kind of coaching and guiding our instructional team. And I also do still have some students myself that I teach various phases of flying. So I have private pilot students, instrument students, and then commercial students currently. And I'm on a pathway to eventually become a corporate pilot, which we'll get to in a little bit. But as you can see from the picture on the right side, my kind of desire to fly started back when I was 9 years old. So this was through a program that the EAA puts on called Young Eagles, where pilots throughout the country really kind of give opportunities to students who are interested in aviation, and take them up for their first flight. So that was as one of the program, and it's kind of come full circle now because I give Young Eagle rides. So it's kind of cool to see that community of aviation, really passionate people sharing their passion with students. Okay,
Now
I'll
I'm doing
go
a little bit
next
of
slide.
math here already on my
Mhm.
side. How old do you have to be to start taking lessons and things? Is there an age requirement?
Yeah, so you can start taking lessons at any age. You have to be 16 to be able to solo the airplane, which means fly the airplane by yourself. So some people even solo their airplane before they get their driver's license. So it's kind of a unique bragging right that some people have the opportunity to do. And then you have to be 17 years old to get your private pilot certificate.
Oh, very cool.
Um, and then the commercial pilot and CFI is 18 years old. So like with my journey, I started flying when I was still in high school. I started training the May after my junior year, so going into my senior year of high school. Um, and the nice thing, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, is that there's various ways to get there, right? So I trained with what's called a Part 61 school for my private pilot certificate, which allows the training to be very flexible. So I could fly after school, I could fly on the weekends, I flew throughout the summer. and kind of tailored a schedule that fit my needs to be able to get me that private pilot certificate, which I got the same day I graduated high school. So it's kind of a fun day in that regard. So yeah, good question. Um, so kind of dive into the pathway, right? So a lot of people um, aren't real familiar with this, so we'll kind of talk through some of the steps to get you from point A to a professional aviation career. So your first couple ratings you're going to get. We can see it's the private pilot, which I mentioned before, the instrument rating. For the private pilots, you need the legal minimum is about 40 hours per the Federal Aviation Regulations, which gives us guidance for the requirements necessary to be eligible to obtain a private pilot certificate. 40 hours is pretty ambitious. A lot of people, the national average is going to be closer to 60, 70 hours. And a lot of this is directly correlated into how much you're able to put into it, right? So I've had really motivated students who've done their studying, done prep work outside of flying, are flying multiple days a week in preparation for their certificate, get their license in 40.1 hours, right? So right at that legal minimum. And obviously still well-rounded, very sharp, right? We don't want to cut corners in flight training by any means, because I have to sign them off, and if I feel like they're prepared as the flight instructor, I'll sign them off to take the check ride when they're ready for that. Then I've had other people who maybe have a full-time job and have a family do their private pilot training over the course of 2 years, right? And then those people tend to have a little bit more flight time just because they're maybe only able to fly once a week or once every other week, right? So you can really tailor that training to what you want. But if we're looking to go the career route, I definitely suggest flying as much as you can, being involved in it as much as you can right away, because that's going to help the process go a lot quicker, and you're going to be able to come out of it with a lot fewer flight hours, which kind of directly relates to cost of the training. So then after the private, the next logical step is to go into the instrument rating. Instrument rating is kind of a whole different type of flying, right? So we're flying in the clouds with the instrument rating. For a lot of the training, we have a view limiting device. So you're only flying the airplane by reference to the flight instruments, which is kind of really unique. It helps build a lot of precision in the flying, and it's really quite fun to learn. Very rewarding license to get. There's some requirements that are outlined in the regulations. You need 50 hours of cross-country flight time. You need 40 hours of flying either with that view limiting device or in clouds in IMC conditions, which are instrument meteorological conditions, as well as some other requirements for cross-country and training and things like that. But then after your instrument rating, generally students will be at about anywhere from maybe 90 to 110 flight hours. And then you roll into your commercial pilot certificate. Now, kind of a misrepresentation of this certificate is if people think, oh, well, you just got your commercial pilot certificate, what airline do you fly for? It's not really that step yet. The commercial pilot certificate essentially now allows you to receive compensation for operating an airplane. So at that level, it could be a variety of things, which we'll get into in a little bit. But the commercial pilot certificate, to be eligible for that, you need 250 hours of flight time in a Part 61 school. So kind of between that instrument rating, between that commercial pilot certificate, students are really flying. And it's a really fantastic time to kind of hone your skills and really polish your flying skills. You learn a lot during that time, just going out flying and practicing. There are some additional maneuvers and things for the commercial pilot certificate, but you're really kind of now getting a really deeply rooted foundation of the knowledge you've learned up to that point, and kind of mastering your skills. And then kind of an add-on to the commercial pilot certificate, right? So you get a commercial pilot. The most common way to go is to get your commercial pilot single engine first. So commercial pilot in airplanes with only one engine. And then what a lot of people will do is add on their multi-engine commercial, which is generally a little bit shorter of a course, right? Most people can do it in maybe 7 to 10 hours of flight time. And then it's an add-on certificate. You take another check ride, and now you're eligible to fly as a commercial pilot, both single engine and multi-engine airplanes. So those are kind of the fundamental steps. Does anybody have any questions? I know the online chat might have some.
Yeah, students, that's a good reminder. Just enter any questions you might have. Now is the time to get anything you were thinking about answered. I was surprised to hear you say, 7 to 10 hours for that additional certification. All all in, you were giving, kind of those, we were looking at around 100, maybe now we're up to 120, 30. What would you say is kind of that those training hours that you would achieve, that you then maybe are pursuing different career paths? What should somebody be achieving to really give themselves a chance to land in a job as a pilot?
Yeah, so there's not really any great single answer for that, right? Because we understand, and most flight schools will understand, everybody learns at a different pace, right? And especially being in a Part 61 school, we account for that flexibility, right? So if it takes you 60 hours to become a private pilot versus 40, well, if you're looking to go to the career track, you're going to need 250 hours anyways, right? So if you're not grasping a concept or something in any one of these trainings, we're going to work with you to make sure you pass that hurdle and are able to understand the material. And ultimately, we're looking to make safe pilots, right? So we're not going to cut corners on anything to get you through in a certain amount of hours, right? Those are just kind of a baseline we use, right? It's really when the instructor feels you're ready to take the check ride or have the skills to solo, that's when we're going to do that.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
that makes a ton of sense. Thank you.
So, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so moving on, so those are the fundamentals, and then so after you get that commercial pilot certificate, right now you have some options. So you're looking to time build, and by time building, that's essentially flight time, flight experience, and there's a lot of different ways to be able to get to that point. One of the more common options, and the option that I'm doing, is becoming a flight instructor, right? So it's an additional certificate that you earn after your commercial pilot certificate. You go for your CFI, certificate of flight instructor. And then now the tables kind of turn, right? So you went from being trained, now you're training other pilots, right? So with that first CFI certificate, you can train private pilots, and we can do some of the training for a commercial pilot. But now you're teaching people how to fly. You're flying with people, and all that time counts for you as well. You're able to log piloting command time during the times you're teaching, which is the way we can build up that experience. So the CFI is kind of the baseline flight instructor. You also have your CFII, which allows you to teach instrument students. And then your MEI, multi-engine instructor, which allows you to teach people how to fly multi-engine airplane. So that's a popular way to build that hours. Now, the other one would be a low-time pilot job, right? And this is something you'd be able to do with just a commercial pilot certificate. So a lot of popular options for something like this would be like pipeline patrol, right? They use small single-engine airplanes to fly along pipelines to look for leaks or things that could be a hazard. Skydivers, right? Dropping skydivers is another popular option for this. Ferry flying airplanes, right? So people need to have an airplane move from one side of the country to the other. You can receive compensation for moving that airplane to the other side of the country. And there's some other smaller jobs. And all these jobs are going to be in smaller airplanes, right? So, single engine airplanes, or if you have a multi-engine certificate, potentially light multi-engine airplanes, right? So we're not really at the jet level yet. We gotta build up that time and experience. to be able to get at that point. But we're essentially building from 250 hours or thereabout to about 1,500 flight hours, which is when you're eligible to get what's called the ATP certificate, which is the Airline Transport Pilot Certificate. Even a lot of like corporate operations and things require an ATP certificate for the pilots, right? So it's not exclusive to airlines. But I kind of relate it to almost like a doctorate of aviation, right? Having an ATP certificate, because it's one of the higher levels of certifications that you can get as a pilot. Questions there at all?
No, I don't see any.
Okay. So after you get those 1,500 hours, and as far as timeline for this, right, it's for somebody that's super ambitious getting through this point, right, they can do this path in, I'd say, probably 4 to 5 years to get up to the 1,500 hour mark. If they're really pushing, some people may be able to do it quicker. Other people might take a little bit of time. For me, so I started started training in 2019, and I just broke 1,500 hours last month. So for me, it was about 6 years of time, and I wouldn't say I probably could have moved a little bit faster. I had some other ventures that I was doing kind of throughout the process, so people can certainly kind of get to this point in less time if they so choose. But that's the beauty of it, right? You can kind of take it at your own pace, and you have other things, your family things that come up. It really works well. So after you get that 1,500 hours, things start to open up a little bit more. So we talked about the ATP certificate, which can kind of be the entrance into an airline, right? So most people will start at a regional operator. Think like Envoy or Republic Air, right? So a lot of these operations are branded as some of the bigger airlines, right? Like American, Delta, United, but they're regionally operational, right? So they may run a feeder route from Chicago to say Indianapolis, right? So smaller routes, right? These are generally less experienced pilots building hours, building experience, and then they'll ultimately upgrade, right? You start as a first officer, right? So you're flying second in command in the right seat of the airplane. You have a captain flying. As you build more time, more experience, you upgrade to captain, you fly that, and then the opportunity opens up to maybe go into one of the mainline operators like Delta, United, American, things like that. That's the airline route. That's one way you can go, but there's an abundance of other type of flying you can go. Charter flying is another popular option. Charter flying, I'd say, is kind of a unique mix between airline and corporate flying, right? Because with charter flying, I like to think of it as you're kind of the Uber of the skies, right? So you're flying around people who charter an airplane or rent an airplane to be able to go where they want. And a lot of the charter operations, think like NetJets or FlexJets, they have a lot of the same systems in place that an airline do as far as support for maintenance, support for dispatching, support for flight planning, and things like that. So you're not 100% reliant on doing all that. You generally have a schedule when you're charter flying. A popular one would be like a 7 days on rotation, 7 days off. Some other companies do like a 2 week on, a 2 week off schedule. So you're on the road for 2 weeks and then you're home for 2 weeks, right? So you can kind of find something that fits your lifestyle in that regard. And then corporate flying is kind of the other end of the spectrum, right? So you can have they operate under what's called Part 91, which is a set of rules that businesses will operate under. And there's a really kind of diverse spread of organizations and things you can do corporate flying, right? So you can fly for a wealthy individual or a wealthy family, right? So that's going to be a whole different schedule than if you're flying for maybe like a big company where they have a established department where there may be 10 different pilots in that department. You have some sort of schedule that you work with, right? So it can really kind of be opposite ends of the spectrum with corporate flying, and that's the beauty of it. You can really select what fits your lifestyle, what fits your needs, how much you want to fly, how much you want to be home, and things like that. So really unique. and some other options, right? So these are kind of as you build that experience, but it's also not a bad thing if you wanted to do one of those commercial pilot jobs forever. There's nothing wrong with that either, right? So I listed some other examples. Being a cargo pilot, right? So flying for FedEx, flying for some of the smaller operations like freight runners here in Wisconsin is a popular one. It could be a missionary pilot. It could be an agricultural pilot. A ferry pilot full time, right? As you build more experience in jets and things, those need to be ferried as well. It could be an air ambulance pilot. The DNR hires pilots to scout out wildfires. You can also be wildfire relief pilot, right? So where you see big airplanes dropping water and anti-fire material on wildfires, that's an option. Aerial mapping is another good way to build time as a commercial pilot, right? So you're surveying areas and things like that. So there's really an abundance of opportunities available in aviation, which makes it so exciting. Okay. So how to get there? This is the fun one. So Part 141 versus 61 school. So I kind of have the unique experience of being able to talk about both, right? Because I got my private pilot certificate at a Part 61 school, and then I did the rest of my ratings at a Part 141 school. And it really depends on what you want to do, right? We kind of already talked about some of the advantages of a Part 61 school being a little bit more flexible in nature. You can kind of pick and choose your schedule, move at the pace you want. So that's advantageous for some people. Whereas a Part 141 school is going to be more like a collegiate style program, right? So you have to be there, every day, so many hours a day. There's not a lot of flexibility as far as how the training goes because they follow a pretty rigid syllabus that's approved by the FAA. You get the same certificate regardless whether you're going out of 61 school or Part 141 school, but the way you get there is a little bit different. One of the things I like about instructing in a Part 61 school is that if a student's struggling on a certain part of flying, right, we may be able to move to a different portion of the curriculum and then revisit that spot that they struggled on. So sometimes that helps people to move away from it for a little bit and then come back and they're able to get it. Whereas Part 141 school, that may not be the case, right? Because there's certain stage checks and things that you have to follow, right? So if you don't pass a stage check, well, you have to revisit whatever you failed on until you're able to pass that stage check, right? So it's a little bit more structured, a little bit more rigid. Some people excel at that. Other people, it's kind of a concrete wall for them. But the 61 school provides a little bit more flexibility. College or no college, right? Generally, Part 141 programs are going to be affiliated with a college, a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, like I did, or no college, right? You can have the unique ability in a Part 61 school to also partner up with a college. Liberty University is an example of one we've used in the past, where as you get certificates, like a private pilot certificate and instrument rating in a Part 61 school, you can transfer those into a college program, and those count for credits, right? So you're transferring in those ratings. And it can get up to a certain credit level. And then you might be able to do online classes with that program if you did want to pursue, whether that be a bachelor's degree or an associate's degree for that further education. So that's a really unique thing with a Part 61 school that allows you to do that. Let's see, there was something else I was going to mention to that. You don't necessarily need a college degree to get a career in aviation, which is something that's also really unique. It used to be, right? So most of the airlines used to require having a bachelor's degree or something like that. But now we're in a unique time period, and especially going through COVID, where there was such a shortage of pilots, they dropped that requirement. So you can able to go right into the airlines without having a degree. It might make you stand out a little bit more, right? And potentially in the future, if there's a deep slowdown of the aviation industry, that requirement might come back up, right? So I don't don't advise people to not get the degree, but focus on the flight training, and then maybe add a degree a little bit later could be valuable. Another option that people can do is going into the military. Kind of the military training route. One of the advantages of that is that you're really not going to be too financially invested in that, because the military is going to pay for a lot of that training. So, questions on any of that before we move on?
Not so far in the chat. Students, I think we'll be wrapping up here in a few minutes. So please, if there's any, enter them in the chat. Um, Along with it, you mentioned cost, certainly, with
Hmm.
like as an example, the Part 61 flight school. Would Does financial aid come into play in that type of scenario? Obviously, I'm assuming any that are associated with a university or technical school, there's that option for financial aid. Does that also apply in a Part 61 school?
So it does not, and that's one of the differences, right? So Part 141 schools generally going to be eligible for student loans, and things financial aid in that regard, where 61 schools often are not. One thing I will say is that in the long run, you're going to spend more at a Part 141 school than a Part 61 school, right? So if you have the means to be able to support financing your own training, you're going to be able to get out of it for a little bit cheaper in a Part 61 school versus 141. But that's one of the disadvantages of a 61 school, is that's not eligible for financial aid. I will say there are a lot of fantastic grant opportunities and scholarship opportunities out there, through organizations such as EAA, AOPA. Women in Aviation is another big one, and those scholarships and grants would apply towards flight training at a Part 61 school in most cases.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
And one of our students
Yeah,
is
good
asking
question.
then, yeah, too, on the college side, then, some of this disadvantages. I heard you mention a couple, right? It's a little more regimented, not as much flexibility as the Part 61. Other disadvantages going with a college, would you say?
Um, I'd say so. I really haven't had the experience, but from what I've heard on other students before, some of these collegiate programs are so big. There's so many students. There's so many instructors. You can kind of get lost in the program a little bit. You're kind of just a number versus a person. Whereas the Part 61 schools tend to be a little bit more individually tailored, right? We talk with our students, we get to know our students, we get to know what they like, what they don't like. We get to know them as a person, which really kind of adds a personal touch. And I think that's super important in the aviation community, because a lot of it's about relationships, getting to know people, getting to know how they got to where they are. And you'd be amazed at how many doors open up by getting to know people in the aviation community, whether that be a job or whether that be an airplane, or students or relationships or advice, right? It's really, really valuable aspect in getting to know the people.
Yeah,
So
that's such a good point. And I think
good
students,
question.
even seeing right here, this slide particularly, it gives you, the map. So then you can do some research for yourself and speak with your family and truly figure out which option is going to be best for you. Whereas, before this conversation, you might not have even had any idea where to start or the multiple ways into the career field. So this is fantastic information.
Right. Yeah, I think one last slide here before we wrap up. So, a couple tips and tricks, right? We kind of touched on this a little bit already, but stay engaged, right? So, join different aviation groups, such as EAA, AOPA, and it's a very unique opportunity to have EAA in our own backyard, here being in Wisconsin, in Oshkosh, just down the road. People flying from all over the world to be involved in EAA, and it's only a couple hour drive for us too. So get involved with that. There's also local EAA chapters at airports around you. We have one here at Wapaka, but that's a good opportunity to be able to network, right? Get to know pilots, get to fly, right? Join a Young Eagles program, things like that. Stay focused is another important tip. It's a lot of work. There's going to be a lot of hard times throughout training. There's going to be some stumbling blocks, but keep that determination and enjoy where you are in the process. Right? It's a multi-year journey to ultimately be able to get to where you want to be in aviation. So enjoy where you are, and keep those goals in mind as well, because it's going to make it a lot more enjoyable working to that. Network a lot, so seek out opportunities to learn more about all the different aspects of aviation. I mentioned some today that you might not even have been familiar with. So get to know those people who are doing different and unique things in aviation, and that will really open up the doors. So
Wonderful.
I
I
think that's
love
about it.
Yeah, this has really been fantastic, and I love that you provided some ways to learn more about the industry without committing to schooling or lessons or anything right off the bat.
Hmm.
Even just
Hmm.
getting involved in those local organizations. A lot of time those are volunteer run or nonprofits, that type of thing. I have just a couple more questions. Um, One would be, so as students are thinking about this, kind of in that same vein, what types of classes or skill sets would you say lend themselves well to people who are successful in this profession?
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So there's certainly some math involved. I don't think it's going to be as advanced as what people think or used to think, right? But some different equations and things that we can utilize to be able to help understand the descent profiles and climb profiles and things like that. Um, I think geography is a big one too, kind of knowing about the area, knowing about terrain. Weather's a big one as well, right? Because it's very critical to what we do as pilots, understanding the weather, how it's going to work. So if there's opportunities to seek out classes in subjects like that, I think that could certainly be helpful. Um, and even too, as you're in high school, and I did this too through my Part 141 program, you can learn ahead of time, right? So even if you are looking to go the Part 61 route, there's different online courses and things that you can start right now to be able to start preparing and getting some of that ground knowledge that's going to help you out a long ways. Once you do actually start flying, things are going to make a lot more sense, and then you're going to be able to put the pieces together a lot sooner by doing one of those learn to fly courses and things like that. Sporties is one example that we use that provides a learn to fly course online.
Oh, very cool.
Hmm.
Yeah, and then lastly, I was it was really interesting to see the many different career paths, right? You might think like become a commercial pilot, and that means that you are flying at these big airlines, but you provided so
Hmm.
many different options. How competitive is this as a career field? You mentioned shortages after COVID. Have you seen a rebound in that? Is it a highly competitive field, or there are lots of opportunities for new pilots?
Yeah, there's still a lot of opportunities for pilots now, and there's going to continue to be opportunities, right? People aren't going to stop flying anytime soon, right? So as airlines add new airplanes, they need pilots to fly those airplanes, right? And that's really going to drive the entire industry, especially as more and more airplanes are built. People are going to need to fly them. So I foresee it being really, really good opportunity for a long time coming. It ebbs and flows like anything, right? So right now we're kind of in a little bit of a slowdown in the hiring, I'd say. I'd even say it's probably more of a return to normalcy, just
Mm.
because kind of 2020 and COVID was such a interesting time. It's a little bit more normal now, but like anything, there's always going to be a demand. So start working on it now, and there's going to be an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, people will be fine, but too, like even if you think of the rise of like online shopping or the continuation of that, like being able to the transportation distribution component of that will
Hmm. Hmm.
continue to contribute to that as well. So
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
Noah, thank you
absolutely.
so much. This has been so informative and a really fantastic conversation. Thank you for breaking down what could be a seemingly complex career field and just showing us all the different facets of it. Thank you for sharing your expertise.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate the time.